If you've ever dived into German military vehicles from World War II, you've probably been hit with this wall of confusing letters and numbers. SB.KFZ.251, SD.KFZ.181, SD.KFZ.2. What on earth does it all mean? Well, today we're going to unpack that very system by focusing on one of the most advanced and, frankly, rarest vehicles of the entire war. Let's get into it.
Okay, so the key to this whole thing is this one term, Sonderkraftfahrzeug, or, Sd.Kfz for short. It literally just means special purpose vehicle. This was Germany's catch-all designation for pretty much anything with an engine that wasn't your standard car or truck. It was their way of trying to organize a massive and really diverse military machine.
And when I say diverse, I am not kidding. On the left, you've got the Sd.Kfz2, the famous Kettenkrad, which is basically a tiny tracked motorcycle. And on the right, that's the Sd.Kfz 181, which you probably know as the Tiger I heavy tank. The exact same designation system covered both of these vehicles and everything in between. That range is it's incredible. It really shows you the system was all about function, not about being simple.
All right, so to really get a feel for how this system worked in the real world, we're going to zoom in on one specific family of vehicles. And the story starts with a huge problem the German army was facing right at the beginning of the war. Their reconnaissance vehicles. They just weren't cutting it.
The invasions of Poland and then France were a real wake-up call. The Army's armored cars at the time, they were fast on roads, sure, but they were lightly armored and pretty much useless off-road. The Wehrmacht quickly realized they needed something tougher, something with way more range and more firepower. And so, in August of 1940, a project kicked off to build a true, next-generation, 8-wheeled Scout using all those hard lessons they just learned from the front lines.
Now, what's so interesting here is the very specific list of requirements. See, this new vehicle was being designed with a very particular battlefield in mind, North Africa. It had to be fast on and off-road, well-armored, and have a massive operational range. But the crucial point, the one that would literally shape its entire design, was the engine. It absolutely had to be air-cooled to have any chance of surviving that brutal desert heat.
And the answer they came up with was a vehicle that was in so many ways a complete engineering marvel for its time, the Sonderkraftfahrzeug 234.
And this is what they built. This sleek, 8-wheeled beast is the SKFZ 234. What you're looking at right here is the 234/2 variant, famously nicknamed the Puma. And let me tell you, it looked formidable because it was formidable. And as we're about to see, it was just one member of a very versatile family. So let's peek under the hood, because this thing was just packed with advanced technology. It was built on a monocoque chassis, which means its body and frame were a single, super strong unit, kind of like a modern car, making it incredibly tough. It had 8-wheel steering, which gave it fantastic agility. And get this, the transmission had 6 forward gears and 6 reverse gears. You pair that with a massive 1,000-kilometer operational range, and its mobility was just, unmatched. And that wild gearbox leads to this absolutely brilliant design feature. To take full advantage of being able to go 90 kilometers per hour in reverse, it had a second driver's seat, facing backwards. So if a recon unit ran into trouble, there was no need for a clumsy, slow 3-point turn. The rear driver could just take over and get them out of there at top speed. Genius. And that brings us right back to that original design requirement for the desert. Powering all this innovation was a Tatra 103, an air-cooled V12 diesel engine. And this is so telling. It was the first and only German armored vehicle of the entire war to use an engine like this, a direct answer to the need for a Scout that could handle the most extreme climates imaginable. But the real genius of the SKFZ 234 wasn't just its amazing chassis. It was how incredibly adaptable it was. This one design actually evolved into 4 distinct variants, each built to meet the constantly changing needs of the battlefield. Let's break them down. Okay, first up, we've got the one everyone knows, the Sd.Kfz 234/2 Puma. Produced from late 1943 into 44, this was the original hard-hitting Scout. It mounted a powerful 5-centimeter gun in a fully enclosed turret, a gun that was more than capable of knocking out other recon vehicles and even some light tanks. But check this out, only 101 were ever made. They were unbelievably rare. Now, as the war dragged on, things got tougher and production had to get simpler. That's where the Sd.Kfz 234/1 comes in. This was a simpler, more numerous version. It swapped that complex turret for a basic open-topped one armed with a 2-centimeter autocannon.
Not only did this make it way easier to build, but it also gave it some anti-aircraft capability, which by that stage of the war was a grim necessity. Next up, built right alongside the 234/1, was the SD.Kfz 234/3. This one was a dedicated fire support vehicle. It got rid of the turret completely and replaced it with an open-tops compartment housing a short-barreled 7.5-centimeter howitzer. Its job was simple: knock out machine gun nests and anti-tank guns to help out the other recon units. Only 88 of these were ever made. And that brings us to the final and, honestly, most desperate evolution. As the war turned against Germany, the mission changed from scouting to just pure tank killing. The result was the SD.Kfz 234/4, the Pakwagen. Just look at this chart. It shows you the massive jump in anti-tank power. I mean, the Puma's gun and the support howitzer were potent, but the Pakwagen's gun, it was in a completely different universe. They basically just bolted a full-size anti-tank gun onto this armored car chassis.
And that gun was the powerful 7.5-centimeter Pak-40, the same one you'd find on late-war Panzer IVs and used as a standard towed anti-tank gun. This move effectively turned a fast scout car into a deadly, highly mobile tank hunter. And they built 89 of them, right up until March of 1945. I mean, we're talking just weeks before the war in Europe ended.
So you've got this incredible, super advanced, versatile family of vehicles. They should have been a total game changer, right? Well, the reality of its service history tells a very, very different story.
And here is the central, kind of tragic irony of the whole story. The very reason for its most unique feature, that incredible air-cooled diesel engine, was to fight in North Africa. But development took so long that by the time the SD.Kfz 234 was actually ready for production, the North African campaign was long over. It was a vehicle purpose-built for a battle it never even got to fight.
And in the end, this is the number that really tells the whole story. 478. That's it. Across all four versions, that's how many of these advanced armored cars were ever built. In the grand scheme of World War II production, that's barely a drop in the ocean. And even those few vehicles were spread so thin. This slide here shows the deployment for just the Puma variant. To put this into perspective, a full-strength German Panzer Division in 1944 had hundreds of armored vehicles, but elite units like the famous Panzer Lehr Division only got about 25 of these. The first SS Panzer got even fewer, with just 16. These weren't tools for winning the war. They were rare, specialist assets doled out in tiny numbers.
So that leaves us with this big question, right? Was the Sd.Kfz 234 an engineering marvel that just showed up too late to the party? Or was it an overly complex, super expensive design that actually diverted precious resources away from simpler, more effective weapons? There's no doubt it was one of the best armored cars of the war. But in the end, its story is a classic example of incredible German engineering that ultimately had very little impact on the final outcome. What do you think?